Hello, everybody. It's Tara Thomas Getman. Excited to be back for another LIFTu live interview. We're streaming on LinkedIn, and we also have platforms where we share content across YouTube and other social media. So it's how we connect these days. And that is how, all the way from Australia via social media, we were able to meet up with a personal branding expert who is our guest today, Lauren Clemett. I'm trying to get her French twist on her surname. Welcome, Lauren. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Tara. It's lovely to see you. Yes, I've had to get my own brain around my surname when I married into it. Clemett's a really strange word to say. So most people in Australia where I live just call me Loza. I don't know why the Australians do this, but they have a way of shortening everybody's names. It's quite embarrassing sometimes, but that's exactly what I get away with.
I love that. Well, you were originally from New Zealand and now are in Australia and enjoying the nice weather towards you. Talk about your role going worldwide, essentially, as a keynote speaker. Tell us what you do when you go out and do these speeches.
Yes, funnily enough, speaking to me is, I've been doing it for a long time. Since I was about 3, I think I started speaking. No, it must have been earlier than that. Keynote speaking is a passion of mine. A lot of people are afraid of public speaking. In fact, I think it's only second fear to dying is speaking in front of people for many people. But I love it. I come alive on stage, and the stage is my happy place. So yes, keynote speaking has been a big part of my life for many years. In recent years, I have really focused on talking about magnetic leadership and personal branding. In fact, I started speaking about personal branding about 10 years ago, and most people didn't know what it was back then. And they were very confused. So it was a perfect time for me to get out there and explain it a bit more. Today, people have a much better understanding of personal branding and what it means to really understand, who you are, who your audience is, and what you're trying to achieve in life and the impact that you want to have. So it's much easier for me to get up on stage and just go, right, let's talk about your personal brand for 45 minutes and give you some ideas on how you can package yours better. And what you should and shouldn't be doing really to grow a bit of an impact and an influence. So yeah, keynote speaking and really helping people to get motivated to get out there and just go, you know what? I need to stand for something. I need my brand to be meaningful. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's really cool. I love doing it.
That's interesting. When we now think of, as you said, something that in your case you've been working with for years, it's now sort of trendy because we think of influencers and how much people have economic ties to their personal brand because it can make or break your business success. How does that apply in the corporate space? Because when we talk about personal branding, does that apply to only the CEO, or how do you marry the personal side of branding with somebody who has to be sort of under that corporate flag?
That's a great question. If you think about it, personal branding's always been there. We just have talked about it in different ways. It used to be called celebrity branding and endorsing. So you used to have a great sports star or a movie star or a model, and they would endorse a brand. They'd smoke the Marlboro cigarettes, or they'd have a certain glass of wine in their hands, or whatever it was, or drive a certain car. All that's happened really, and I think it's really sped up since the event of social media, is that branding has become accessible for everyday humans like us, not just the superstars that are out there. And the nicest thing about in a corporate world is you can really affect the trajectory of your career by working hard on what you want to be known for. Now, there's 2 real reasons why that happens. Number one is actually for yourself. And I'm sure everyone watching has or listening has gone through a process where you've made a decision. If you've been in a situation where you've got to make a decision, whether it's about a house or a car you're buying, or the school your children are going to, or what maybe a decision about your career, and you're in that state of flux. You don't quite know what you're doing. The minute you make a decision, you go, right, we're going to go with that one. There's this amount of stress that leaves your body. And it's because your brain is being able to focus on just the one thing. And Confucius was right when he said, you can't chase 2 rabbits. You're going to miss out on both of them, right? And our brain, and I've actually got my spare brain with me, Tara, if you wouldn't mind me just getting that out this morning. It's my morning ride. My spare brain. Say hello to my brain. I don't know if that was a brain wave. Say hello to my brain.
I love it.
So our brains are not built for really complex things all happening at once. And we get stressed out with uncertainty, which is why during the pandemic, most of our brains were really stressed out because there was so much uncertainty. We just didn't know what was going on. The rules were changing every 5 minutes. So our poor little brain and the hippocampus inside our brain, whenever I say hippocampus, I always imagine a hippo going to Harvard. It's just this weird sort of image in my head. But the hippocampus is there to create memory, and it's like a map inside your brain, and it plots out all the little memories of where you were and includes sound and smell and all those sorts of things. So from a personal branding point of view in corporate, there's nothing worse than being totally invisible and totally forgettable in business, regardless of which business you're in. If it's your own business or you're working in a corporate, if you're forgettable, no one is going to remember you when it comes to promotion time. No one's going to remember you when it comes to making a referral or giving a testimonial or anything like that. So, or asking you even to be on their team to work on a project, you're just going to be forgettable. So you don't want to be that. You want to be memorable in some way. And you don't need to be the big Jerry Seinfeld making the whole office crack up. You don't need to be the big Oprah Winfrey and saving everyone in the office and motivating everyone. You can be humble, you can be an introvert, but you can be memorable for something. And personal branding is all about just retaining that little bit of knowledge and information and that feeling and emotion inside someone's brain, that in that hippocampus, that makes them remember who you are and what you're really good at. So the next time that project comes up that you're going to be perfect for, you're first at the top of their mind. And that's really all branding is all about, is remaining top of mind.
What if you don't know where to start? You're that person in the corner office and you're thinking like, I'm in charge of these people, but I don't want to come off as inauthentic. I don't want them to say that I'm faking it. How can I bring that sincerity as part of that personal branding where I'm just trying to be somebody that they aspire to be like, or at least follow what I ask them to do?
Yeah, it's a great, and authenticity is such an important part of leadership. It's just, everyone talks about authenticity, but I don't know whether people actually understand what it means. It basically means living your brand. But you're right, Tara, unless you know what your brand stands for and you know why your brand is doing this and why you do certain things, you're never going to really understand how to live it. I remember when I first started my speaking career and I was working out my marketing, I was working out what's my positioning, where do I want to be, what do I want to speak on, who's my audience, positioning my brand. I came up with a really, really cool brand. It was called Ultimate Business Propeller, and it was all about like a flight school. It had the brand academy, and I had these like, my logo had these wings like the Top Gun logo. And in fact, even the font that the designer used for my branding was called Top Gun. And I was going to come on stage and talk all about, flying and crashing and burning if you didn't have a good brand, all this sort of stuff. And as I was talking through it with someone one day, and I'd gone to the extent of getting the logo done and I was ready to go, and I spoke to one of my mentors and he said, "Oh, were you in the Air Force?" And I went, "No." I said, "Have you actually flown a plane before?" I went, "No." I said, "I always wanted to be an air hostess and travel around the world when I was a kid because I thought that would be really glamorous and I love travel, but no, I've got nothing to do with flying." He said, "So how can you get on stage and talk about doing that? It just doesn't fit." And I went, "Oh, I've got it so wrong." So a brand and being able to step into if you're sitting in that corner office and you're thinking, what on earth do I do to start with? You actually have to start with you. It's not about how you're going to influence and impact other people around you. You've got to start with what you want to achieve for yourself. What's the legacy you want to leave? What's the impact you want to have? What really drives you? What's your passion and purpose in life? The Japanese call it ikigai. I don't know if you've heard of ikigai before. It's where your natural core skills and talents meet the ability that you have to love doing it. And if you can make money out of that, even better. So, so it's finding those things. What are you passionate about? What are your core skills, your soft skills? And, you know if it's not right, Tara, because when you do it and it feels uncomfortable and it feels difficult and no one gets it, and you're like talking about fighter jet piloting, and you've got no idea what you're talking about and it's hard, you know you're on the wrong track. The minute you just go, oh my goodness, this is so easy, and you feel in flow, you realize what you've done is you've stepped into your expert ease, the stuff that you do with ease that other people find difficult. That's why it's called expert ease, right? So if you can find your expert ease, and it takes a little bit of time to work it out, but there's great methods you can use to do it.
That's great. I love that, expert ease. I'll remember that. If you're just joining us, this is Tara with LIFT. Once a week, we have the pleasure of doing live, and through LinkedIn, we can stream from all over the world, including with our friend Lauren, who's a personal branding expert, who's joining us from Australia this morning on her end. And it's actually midday or getting into later afternoon for the East Coast viewers who are joining us. So Lauren, when we talk about personal branding, you said some of your travels have taken you to unique audiences, one of which was a group of professional pool cleaners. How do you take all of these branding lessons and apply them to a group like that? Give us a little insight about that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It was probably the funnest conference I've ever spoken at. And yeah, it's interesting. Personal branding can touch any part of life. I've spoken to ministers in religion about their personal brands. I've spoken to nurses in hospitals. I've spoken to people in C-suite leaders with big teams. But yeah, in this instance, it was a big room of gyms, pools, cleaners. What an amazing job, to be able to stand by a swimming pool. You can imagine in Australia as well, it'd be pretty nice. Stand by a swimming pool, cleaning the pool all day, and that's your job. But it's not actually as simple as that. It's a highly competitive market, pool cleaning. And a lot of the time, people compete on price. And that's really, Seth Godin, a fabulous branding expert, calls it the race to the bottom, when you're just competing on price. And when you don't have a standout brand, when you're not known, you're not recognized, you don't have a reputation in the marketplace, you do end up just competing on that, how much do you charge? So it was a wonderful audience to talk to, because they really understood it. They understood that if they wanted to really become the guy to go to in the local area, and that was mostly men, you had to really establish your brand. And yet when I asked them, how many of them go out networking every week? How many of you go out to a networking breakfast or a networking brunch in your local community, meet the other real estate agents and lawn mowing guys and house cleaning people and all the people who would refer you? Like, I think it was about 10 people in the room put their hands up, and I'm like, come on, guys, that's one of your lead things you've got to do, is get out there with your brand and make those connections with people who can refer you. And the funny thing is, Tara, is they were all awesome guys. They had great sense of humor. They were very funny. They were very energetic. They were quite entrepreneurial, obviously running their own businesses. And it's a great company to work for. They had a really great brand. And so to say, all you've got to do is go out there and talk to people, which is something they love doing. They just, for whatever reason, hadn't gone down that extra step and gone, well, I actually need to do it as part of my business. I need to do it every week, and I need to make sure I go to the local BNI meeting or whatever it is that's on. So yeah, it was a really interesting conference. And one of the things I loved about it as well, Tara, was we got them to understand their personal communication style. And we broke the entire group up into 4 different types of bird. So eagles, owls, peacocks, and doves. And we did it the first night of the conference, which was at a brewery. So they're all having a lot of fun. And we actually split them up. We got them to do a test. It's actually in my book. There's a test you can do to find out what your dominant style is. They did the test before they came to the conference. And then when they showed up on the Friday night, they got a little sticker of either an eagle, owl, dove, or a peacock. And then we split them up into those groups during the start of the evening. And we basically had them all do the same thing, come up with a 30-second advert for the company while you're having a beer with your group of other eagles and so on. And every single one of those groups behaved how we expected them to, based on their dominant communication style. All the eagles were just standing around talking about work. They weren't really doing the ad. They were just all talking about how it was important that they needed to get out there and market themselves better. And they were all leaders. So no one was doing anything. They're all telling each other what to do. All of the owls were trying to figure out how long was the ad and what was the details, and did it have to rhyme, and did they have to act it out? They just wanted to know all the information. And by the time they ended it was just this long list of all the things that the company was good at. And the peacocks had a massively hilarious skit that they put on that everyone laughed at, and they made fools of themselves. And they were absolutely perfect peacocks. And the doves made a poem. And we're very, talked about how caring the company was, and how wonderful it was to work for them. So every single part of their audience operated in the same way we thought they would. And it was nice because then throughout the entire conference, we could pick out the eagles and the owls and doves and peacocks and say, hey, this is why you react that way, which is great fun.
I love that. I love the animal use, and I'm sure that made it more entertaining. And we'll have you mention more about your book in a moment. I have to ask about how you sort of nudge somebody in terms of using personal branding to weave their authenticity through social platforms, because so many people nowadays, especially, are just burned out from all of this sort of added stress of, oh, I have to post this here and change, my profile picture there. I mean, and I just know there are some people, especially in professional roles, that are saying, hey, I don't want to do social media. I'm staying off of Twitter. I'm off of Facebook. What do you navigate with somebody who feels that they just don't want that personal brand to extend into what we know is sort of something that you inevitably have to engage with, especially if you're trying to promote your brand?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think you're right. We're so overwhelmed with, back in the 1970s, I was around in the 1970s, so I'm showing my age, but
Me too.
yeah. So we know what it was like, right? Before social media. Our brains were exposed to about 500 branded messages a day in the 70s. Today, it's closer to 5,000. So there is that overwhelm. We just constantly feel like we are just being bombarded with information. And there's also, as you say, that pressure for us to get out there and be doing more online. And much as I love some of the stuff Gary Vee does and says, I cannot agree with his just post every day. It's just inane. I don't understand. You need to have a reason for posting. That's my belief anyway. I think, and I heard about it the other day, someone mentioned it as infobesity. We're so overwhelmed with this just bloated amount of information that's out there that it's just like crazy. However, the balance is people do really want to know, like, and trust you. And I think it's interesting, Tara, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Almost the more social media there is, the more we want to know the real person. The more that we're sort of sick of the fake. I wrote an article recently about how we just can't fake it till you make it. It's a great way of motivating yourself. I'll just fake it till I can make it, and I'll give myself that confidence. I'd rather people use the phrase see it and be it. Visualize where you want to be and then be it. Just do it. Don't think about it too hard, because if you're in brand, if you are in flow with your brand, if you're online and aligned with what you're supposed to be doing, it'll come naturally to you. And you'll get a feeling. It's like a litmus test, that feeling in your gut that it's the right thing to do. If you're ever hovering over the post button on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, or, hovering over that button, should I do it? And the gut is saying, oh, I don't know about this. Don't do it, because it's not on brand. If you go, I'm so passionate about this and I'm prepared to stand up for this and I will defend this till the ends of the earth, then hit post and go for your life. If you're just doing it to be controversial, it's really not going to work, because you need to back it up with everything that you do and say. So I think there needs to be a purpose for what you're doing. There needs to be a reason why you're doing it. I talk about marketing that matters. And if it matters,
I lost you, Lauren. It's
really annoys me
now
when
you're
people
back.
think,
Hey,
oh,
sorry, we lost you for a
lost
moment.
me for a minute.
Go back to when you said marketing that matters. That's the moment that you froze for a second.
Good old internet. So yeah, marketing that matters is all about posting something that has meaning. It has meaning for you, it has meaning for your audience. It's not about just creating, a lot of people just, it's clickbait, or I just want to get a response from people, those keyboard warriors. I don't think you need to post everything in your life either. It really annoys me when I see people posting, this is what I had for breakfast. Look, I'm on the bus now. I'm doing, it's just like, we really don't need that information. But if you are on the bus and you see something and you think, man, that's a really good story, that would teach something to somebody, it fits with my brand, absolutely post it. And quite often I will see a personal branding lesson in life and I'll quickly grab my camera or my phone and just take a snap or go, hey, I've just seen this, isn't this hilarious? Because it fits with my brand. And I think you can do that the more you become aligned with who you are, what your brand's all about, and what your story is. Then I think it's really easy to just see those opportunities, and it makes more sense to post at those times.
Yeah, I love that. That's such good advice, because you're right. If you're just posting for the sake of posting and then you become almost a robot and you're not doing content reflective of who you really are, then there is a disconnect when people meet you in person or they work with you and they see that motivational quote after you just, cuss somebody out. And they're like, you are not who you pretend to be on social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
There's an
it's
amazing
hard.
guy with the sign who started a really influential social media channel. He was holding up a sign that's got things written on it. If he just held up a sign that said, I had been to breakfast, or I'm about to get on the bus, or no one would have even thought he was, what is he on about? But he posts really topical content on his sign that is some sort of commentary on what's going on today. So, and it's funny, or it's quirky, or it's motivating, or inspiration. It makes you stop and go, oh, that's really quite clever. So, you're right. Posting regularly is important, but man, once a week, if you've got something really good to say, video is awesome, because then people get to hear you and see you and feel a bit more about your personality. They get to really know you. But then repurpose it as a meme, as a blog, as an advert, as whatever. Just one really, really good bit of content a week, repurposed 40 times, is better than 40 bits of inane content in my mind.
That's good. Well, you've given us some great insight. I really appreciate it. Tell us about your book before we let you go.
Oh, absolutely. So Finding Your Brand True North. I struggled with this book, actually, because I've written a couple of books and I thought, oh, am I just rehashing the same thing over and over again? But Finding Your Brand True North is the latest book that's out. What I loved about this book was that it takes you through the process of creating your personal brand. And I use the analogy of a compass. I've got my compass here as well. I grew up in the bush in New Zealand, Tara. So I spent a lot of time chasing pigs and building, huts and fishing for eels and scraping my knees and getting dirty, coming home at dinner time hungry. I loved that whole lifestyle. Was fabulous. We never ever got lost. We only ever got temporarily misplaced in the bush. But of course, we used a map and compass, and the compass was something that stuck with me, because a compass is like your brand. It keeps you on true north. Everything we've talked about today, when you feel that you are not aligned, it's because you're not on north. You're slightly off, and you only need to be a little bit off north. And anyone's done orienteering will know this. And you can be, by the time you get to your destination, you're miles away from where you should be. So if you can find your north, it's a really good way to do it. And the book takes you through this process. So we start at West, which is, who are the people you really want to work with? Who are the people you want to influence and impact? Who is your audience? Then we move to East, which is, what is your expertise? We talked about that today. What are the things you do with these that other people find difficult? How can you package that to really stand out? We then go to South, which is really easy. You just draw a line through that South and turn it into a dollar sign. It's all about your value and how you can deliver an outcome for people. And then we go to North, which is all about your passion and your purpose, your why, the reason why you're doing what you're doing. And basically the book leads you through that, which is really easy. All those chapters are through there. And it's also got some really good stories about like the Nike story, how that brand became, part of our ethos. The big brands like Spangler. I'm sure you've heard of Spangler, Tara. I bet you've got a Spangler at home, haven't you?
I feel like I've heard it, but explain it.
So James Spangler in the 1970s used to work in a department store. and he had really, really bad asthma. And whenever he cleaned up the floors, brooming up the dust it would affect his breathing. So he's quite an ingenious guy, James. So he puts a bag over the broom and attaches a little engine to it. So as he's sweeping, it pulls the dust up into the bag. So James Spangler makes a few of these, and he's, a bit inventive, and a few of his friends are using them. And he sells a couple of them, but never really takes off until he shows it to his cousin, Susan Hoover, who
I love it.
buys the idea, patents it, and we now use it. So we don't spangle. None of us spangle, but we all know what a Hoover is, right? So it's become a generic brand. So that story is in there, the story of Audi, the story of Steve Jobs, the story of Apple, how it started, all those great brand stories about how the brands came to live and how they lived their brand. And plus there's a couple of boutique brands in there that people won't have known about, but the stories are phenomenal. And they just really are there to motivate you to use your own story as part of your brand. It's a really good read, but it's also an instructional guidebook as well.
Well, that's all such good information. Congratulations on your book and your continued success sharing your message of personal branding worldwide. And we thank you so much to Lauren Clemett for being our guest for our LIFTu live interview this week. Enjoy the holidays, and thanks again for getting up early to honor our time zone.
Thank you so much. And I think I just love to leave people with the message that, you have amazing gifts and talents that the world needs, and you do deserve it. You deserve to be well-known, well-paid, and wanted. So just get out there.
Great note to end on. Thank you.